I'd like to welcome Kashyap Kopparam. I hope I pronounce it in the right way. Good morning or good afternoon, Kashyap.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. And good afternoon to you all. I hope you all are having a great DevOps Con so far. Today, I'll be talking about DevOps in the enterprise. But before that, a little bit about myself first. I am, as was introduced, Kashyap. I'm a principal engineer at GoTo Financial. I've been here for 3 years, and in total, I've just had about 8 years experience. So I'm kind of a noob. Mostly I've been a backend developer, working on languages like C#, Golang, Python, Java, Kotlin, different kinds of stuff like that. And only lately I've moved into infrastructure and operations in the ops side and things like this. And this is where I've started to transition more into implementing DevOps principles and practices and cultures, and less of just a developer, right? So, but I also do work with solutions for product teams and engineering teams. So that's where I come from. Today, I will be talking about how we implement these DevOps principles in the enterprise from right from the beginning, right? And how we evolve these DevOps principles and practices through the journey of our company, from going from 5 developers to 100 developers and even more, right? And on a quick side note, wait till the end of the presentation for some great giveaways and raffle from Aiven. More on that later, so stick around. That's going to be exciting. All right. So firstly, if you've opened a DevOps book or been to a DevOps conference like this, you probably have heard of the CALMS principle, right? It's just an acronym for different DevOps principles. And I'm going to focus today more on the C part of it. No, it's not coffee. It doesn't stand for coffee or COPC. It's culture. And the culture is very important for a company, especially when it starts and it evolves into a big one, right? And just to give you an example of how we used to work, back then we were just 5 developers, right? We didn't have any specific engineering function or anything. There are 5 devs in the whole company, and we have to release a financial product out into the hands of our customers in production and compliant and everything. And for this, we have to do a bunch of things. We have to write the code, we write the CI and CD scripts, we write the tests, we even do manual tests, we automate the tests so that we don't want to do these manual tests. We even provisioned our own infrastructure. We monitor it, and even weird things that we've never encountered before, like producing financial reports for the finance team and business intelligence visualizations and things like this. We did all of this. It's I'm not exaggerating, it is a lot of work. But on the same note, it's extremely fun to do as well. It's a lot of fun to do. And this is where I think we established the culture of engineering at GoTo Financial, where if you're a dev, you're pretty much responsible for everything of that product, right? There's no division of, it's your fault, it's your fault. No, there's no such finger pointing. It's just you're responsible for everything. And that's what we wanted to hold dear to us and maintain it, right? But as you can tell, this mode of operation is surely not scalable. It doesn't work when we grow our product line or bring in more diverse perspectives and diverse kind of engineers into our team. And once we scale up, whether it's for one application or different products and different applications and functions, we usually have to sacrifice something. And you probably have heard of good, fast, cheap rule, right? And that basically says that if you want to build something fast and cheap, then you're going to lose the quality of that product and the long-term maintainability of this particular piece of machinery. In our case, it's code. And if you want to build something which is of high quality, which your customers love, your developers enjoy working on it, and it's also very cheap to build, then you'll have to spend a lot of time writing these nice, highly tested, highly maintainable pieces of code, right? But if you want something good and you want something to be out there into the hands of your customers fast, then you'll have to pay the price for it. This is pretty much what we chose at GoTo Financial. Investing in technology is probably one of the best decisions you can make for decades now, or even maybe a century, I'd say. But this investment in technology that we have made has continued to give us benefits, and it continues to impact our customers. We have had really good feedback saying that we are never down, we resolve incidents fast, and things like this. And this is something which we don't want to stop. I want to take one example of this where we want to, I want to share how we implemented investing in technologies such as Aiven for Apache Kafka in this case. And that's helped our business grow faster. And also at the same time, it's helped DevOps in a way, right? And this diagram that you see on the right is one of the snapshots of how our architecture evolved from the day one of how we are 5 developers into an intermediate state where we have had a couple of products and maybe a platform kind of product. And all these teams, what they did was they were completely independent, right? And they built their own infrastructure. And what ended up happening was they built a silo of products and tools that they used in their team internally to achieve their product objective. And this, the sharing part of the CALMS acronym, if you may, was pretty much non-existent. But we did try to bring up a platform team where we would share certain logic or resources that every single other financial product may need, right? For example. And what happens with this was we need robust communication between the team. And today, if you look at technology, the way you communicate with another service, for example, is HTTP, if you can afford an synchronous call, or you do something asynchronous with HTTP, which I think engineers find hard to fathom. But Kafka is something easy to fathom for engineers, right? And that's how we asynchronously communicate between teams and between services. And for example, if you have a platform team, which all teams have to communicate to, we again use Kafka to communicate, right? But as you can see here, each team has built their own Kafka. They have their own tools and buses over here. And the way to share data between them, we came up with hacky solutions. One was where we used Mirror Maker, where we would just, duplicate the topic and be like, okay, guys, this is a shared topic, so deal with that. The second was how we made a custom solution called a Kafka Bridge. It's basically kind of a HTTP layer with a mapper of sorts. And you can use gRPC or HTTP and things like this. And that's how we made certain teams be able to communicate with other teams because they had these constraints. And that's why we needed this custom solutions. And you can already tell it's very messy and it's very inconsistent. So I don't really know if I'm building a new service, I don't really know which is the proper way to communicate with this platform team, right? And it's very hard to maintain, very error prone. And of course, you're running 3 Kafka separately is a bit on the pricey side as well. So what we did was we consolidated all of these shared topics into one centralized Kafka by using Aiven for Apache Kafka. And that allowed us multiple things, right? One is it not only makes the architecture neat, simple to understand, and I mean, I'm sure you can tell this is a much cleaner diagram than before, right? But there are some things we have to be very careful with these kind of implementations. One is it's very, very critical and central to the operations of our systems. So we need this to be very robust. That's the one thing. The second thing is, if we implement this in a central fashion, it means nobody wants to deal with it as such. They want to use it, yes, but they don't want to maintain it. They don't want to get pager duties for this and things like this, right? So I'm going to share a poll on Swapcard, and I hope you guys can vote on it. So here we go. The question is, who should be responsible for this central Kafka? If it breaks, who's going to fix it? If you want to change something, who's going to do that? So if you guys can vote, I'll give about 30 seconds to 1 minute. A few seconds left. All right, before I announce the results, here you can see that when you want to have a new feature or a new service that wants to talk to a centralized team or talk to another team which is adjacent to you, you don't have to worry about something else that you want to build. In fact, you have one extra tool in your bag that you can use right away from day one, which is completely robust, right? And that's what this architecture allows us. And I can see the results that 43% of you have said the guys who set it up. Although I kind of see where you come from, because the guys who set it up know what they're doing, and probably they are the best people and people who can solve it the quickest. But I'm here to tell you that it was one person who set this up. And as we all know, if it's one person, he can get sick, he can leave the company, it's a mess. So the next highest is 29% for everyone. I think that is the culture that GoTo Financial is going for. We want this centralized piece of critical part of our system to be owned by everyone. And it's very, very high. In fact, it's very hard to get this mindset into everyone. And the way we do it is 3 steps. The first step is infrastructure provisioning itself, right? Who is going to, how do we even get a Kafka cluster up? What we do here is we leverage the Aiven Terraform provider, which is a provider on top of Terraform, which is a comprehensive toolkit for you to control creation or modifications and everything that you have to do with Aiven for Apache Kafka. And we have written a small Terraform module on top of it, which configures sensible defaults. It configures our networking subnets for different environments. It also does all the monitoring integrations that you get by default. So the DevOps engineer in this case, which was 1 or 2 guys, just maintain this part of the module. But if a new product team comes up and says, hey, we have a different scaling requirement for Kafka, so we want an internal one, they can simply write Terraform code on top of this module and create a Kafka cluster with just 4 lines of code. And this is reviewed by the DevOps engineer, and the automated pipelines can deploy it, and you have it with four lines of code and one review and one click of a button. So that's how easy it is to bring up a Kafka cluster, but yet it's very safe for you to do this because we have configured all these good stuff that a DevOps engineer or an ops background person will think of, right? Which not necessarily a traditional product engineer may think of. And that's where we have this sense of ownership. Okay, I created the Kafka myself. I wrote the code for it. So that's where we bring out the sense that they can look at the code, how his 4 lines of code talks to this module and how that uses Terraform provider. They can go and look at all of this, which gives them the confidence of to see what is going on actually, and also to suggest improvements, which we have had multiple times with this architecture. And the second thing I want to talk about, how we make sure that this belongs to everyone, is access management. We want, if a new developer comes or they leave or whatever it is, we want revoking and providing access to these systems very easy, and it has to be sufficient. I mean, I'm just not going to give, okay, you get the read for topic names only. That's not going to work. We have to give them enough sufficient permissions, but not excessive. That is a fine balance and probably an art to say. It also has to be manageable, and that's where Terraform comes into play again. We write modules to give people access to these central systems, and product engineers or their tech leads are free to go and write in a new name, an email address, which is in our AD, and that will provision the permissions that this person needs, and they have access to these central systems very easily with one line of code, right? This is very important to us because if you don't have access to a system, you can immediately say that I am not responsible for it, right? So we do not want that to happen, and everyone gets access in a safe manner. That's what we go for at GoTo Financial here. And the third thing that I want to talk about is configuration management. Again, on the theme of Kafka, and in particular, I want to talk about topic management because that's probably the most frequent use case that we have while maintaining a Kafka. Now, we do the same rinse and repeat structure over here. We write a module which configures the proper defaults like minimum in-sync replicas or replication factor or a certain namespace for a name of the topic and things like this. And here, there is absolutely no intervention of an external team if you want to create a new topic or modify an existing topic, because a product engineer can write Terraform code and they can peer review it themselves and click on the button which automatically deploys this modified version of the topic or a new topic out into production, all on their own. So here is one of the examples where we have prioritized automation instead of approvals. Right? In when it comes to infrastructure provisioning, we do have one step for approval because of the workflow and policies that we have in our particular organization. But for everyday tasks like this, it's completely owned by them. So this way, with these 3 simple steps, right? Config management, infrastructure provisioning, and access management, you can take any tool and make them feel like, or in fact, it is owned by everyone. Everyone has the access to change it. The DevOps guys have no more access than the product guys in this case. And they are free to change it, improve it, and stuff like this. And I will show you later how this brings out really wonderful kind of suggestions and actions that developers have come up with, which is pretty cool to see. All right. Here is another thing I want to talk about, which is observability. Again, this falls into the metrics part of CALM's acronym. And again, I'm going to bring up another poll here. So there we go. Here, I want to ask you guys, I'm interested to know how many PagerDuty alerts do you think is reasonable to get for 1 week when you are on production support? Let's give it about 30 seconds to a minute. Spoiler alert, I like the results. Great. So half of you have said 0, which is amazing. Well, as geeks and developers and technical people, basically mathematicians at heart, right? We want the ideal scenario of for our systems to be in the ideal scenario where we get 0 alerts, which is great. But it's rarely practical that I've seen this, at least in my career. Less than 2 is something I would totally agree with. Because there's always going to be new patterns, new code, new products, new services that's going to be out in production every single week. And we'll never get them perfect at the first try. There might be some situations where we may for trivial things, but rarely it happens. So I think less than 2 is very, very reasonable. But I think we can agree that if we have more alerts, it's definitely not as productive for developers to work for their daily stuff. And having fewer alerts surely improves productivity. And this is something we have we constantly work on, and this is a continuous battle we continue to fight, and probably will always continue to fight. So there are 3 important principles we follow when it comes to observability. One thing is we want to observe everything. And this is where that pattern of using a Terraform module, which all developers can use, comes into play, because that by default will configure your monitoring integrations. And when you spin up a new Kafka or whatever else you spin up, it's going to have the monitoring set up by default. So your system in production is going to be exporting metrics into this integration, and all that raw data, I emphasize on raw data, is going to be available for you to see. However, this does not mean that your systems are going to enjoy less downtime or it's very robust. You have to visualize it very well. The data means nothing. I'm not going to say, go look at Metrics Explorer and you can see what it is. No, we need to create the right ways of looking at this data so we know what's happening, right? And the other thing is we have to alert very selectively to reduce the alerts, to make this ideal scenario of 0 alerts. Now, one example is when we were configuring an alert for consumer lag. We wanted to know if a consumer was stuck, essentially. That was the aim. And what we did was we just set up an alert saying, okay, if the consumer lag is greater than 1,000, just alert us, right? This worked for, I think, 2 years, and it was working very well for many teams. But a new team came up, and they came up with a particular system which had very bursty loads. right? It had bursty traffic, and then the consumer, by the nature of the way that consumer was working, is a slow consumer. So that guy would never finish 1,000 messages in fractions of seconds or in a few seconds. So we would get the alert. And however, that consumer would eventually catch up. So there was no problem. It was just false positives. So we improved this alert to make composite alerts. Things like, okay, if the consumer is progressing, it's okay. If we predict the consumer is consuming, but he may never catch up with the load that's coming in, then alert us. So these are the kind of improvements we need to constantly make and be aware of. And that's what makes a good working environment for all of us. Less alerts, more better. Finally, I want to conclude this session by saying that you're not doing DevOps if you're using all the latest CNCF tools or all the cool Argo CD or Kubernetes and things like this. That's not what it is about. DevOps is a place to work. It's a culture and kind of the vibe you get where it encourages every single person, every technical person in the company to come up with different ideas, how we can make things better. I think that is the key indicator for me to see when if we are doing DevOps right. And it's also about responsibility, right? Everyone can be responsible for whatever they do, but they're not going to be there forever. People can change roles, they can change companies, they can get sick. Things can happen. So we want the responsibility to be spread across different engineering functions. And finally, the tools or technologies that we have used from decades ago, making those tools easy to use and easy to maintain is what encourages us to follow DevOps principles. And that's what's happened here for us. And yep, that's it. Thank you very much. Again, I'm Kashyap. You can reach me on Swapcard. Here's my email and stuff. And with this, I want to hand it over to Mark from Aiven, who's going to share a few things about Aiven.
Hi, Kashyap. Thank you for the introduction here. So we just really wanted to encourage you to take a free trial with Aiven. Check it out on what Aiven has shared by scanning the code there that you see the top one. And the promo code is DevOpsCon_Singapore. That will give you a 30-day free trial with 400 credits, more than usual, right? And to really reward you for listening in and checking out the presentation, please click on the second QR code as well at the bottom, which will help you to participate in our raffle to win a DJI Mavic Mini drone. Yep. So I guess we will now open to Q&A from the session.
Thank you very much, Mark and Kashyap. And as Mark just said, we are open for discussion. There's already one question in the chat, and I'd just like to read it now. How do we see improvement in day-to-day DevOps environment changes? This is a very generic question. So what would you say? How do you see improvement in day-to-day DevOps environment changes? Right.
I'm not sure if I'm understanding the question correctly, but I want to address one thing when I see this. First of all, when you look at something that is day-to-day, one thing that comes to mind immediately is you have to automate it. If you're not automating it and raising ITSM tickets for this, please talk to your manager. The second thing that I want to address with this is the DevOps environment keeps changing over and over again, even if you're using the same tools. And that's because you may find new use cases for your tools, or you may find new use cases for your infrastructure and things like this. And this is where changes to the way you function as a DevOps, following DevOps principles, following organization, is to be very flexible about it. Have an open mind. That's what I think will help you improve on all the changes that you wish for.
Yeah, if I may add on to that, right, from a business perspective to a DevOps practitioning, right, DevOps is to support the business to inject flexibility and the time to market, right, for your business. So it's all about being able to automate, it's all being able to scale quickly to manage the business load. So for example, by being able to use that combination of Terraform and Aiven for Kafka, right, is to enable organizations, leading companies like GoTo Finance that Kashyap is in now, right, to be able to scale according to the demand. So if there are more questions about how do you achieve the automation, how do you use use this in your DevOps environment, I'm sure we are very happy to share more details with you, and you know where to get hold of us.
Yeah, thank you. I think we could also interpret the questions in the sense of how do you measure improvements? What would you say about that? Because Mark, you just mentioned the business perspective of it all. Any ideas? Or does it make sense to you?
All right, let me take that. I think measuring improvements in the way we do DevOps is something that we are that is a challenging field for us specifically. But the way I look at it is, as I mentioned in one of the earlier slides, that we look at different ideas that developers come up with, and we see, okay, are they constrained to their products, or are they looking at, oh, you know what, we can automate this in your QA, your UI pipeline, UI testing pipeline, and we can use these tools that I got to know from here, and things like this. This collaboration and these kind of ideas that we get from our architecture forums and from our sharing sessions, like the postmortem analysis sharing and things like this. This is where we really see changes when we make certain drastic changes to the way we work by implementing DevOps principles. But measuring them is very challenging. And please feel free to have a chat with me about this. I would love to hear your thoughts.
Cool. Maybe allow me also to add another question. Looking to the list of things and the technologies Aiven is providing, Aiven for PostgreSQL, Aiven for Kafka is already mentioned, Elasticsearch, Aiven for Redis, Aiven for Cassandra, and many, many more things. So these are known open source tools. And maybe you could share a word out, how do they behave when they are brought to cloud? Because, of course, it's not just a hosting model, bringing an existing software to the cloud, but what is different, or how do you make it, let's call it cloud native?
Right. Thank you for the question, Sebastian. So Aiven is known to be a free open source proponent, right? Delivering on a managed services platform. So all the list of database offerings that we have are true open source, right? So we don't add any proprietary code. We're true to open source. So any users can actually choose to use our platform without any login. And I think to add on to that is that Aiven is available on all the major clouds, which means that we are cloud neutral, right? And our customers, again, have the freedom of trying to choose their preferred cloud provider and run the Aiven services on top of that, right? But what is important for the user now is that with cloud computing, such capabilities from Aiven enables them to set up a database infrastructure with the prerequisite security and performance inbuilt into that world-class infrastructure in less than 10 minutes, right? 5 years ago in this world, we are still very much looking at setting up servers. But now you can actually spin up a database infrastructure in less than 10 minutes, right? And it's a very democratic move to the business industry, right? You no longer have to be based on the funds that you have or the investment that you have to get into this world-class infrastructure that's operated by the best technical talents around the world. Right. So as well as we are not a single product company, we are helping our customers to be able to expand and use different databases together to meet their business requirement in the shortest time to market possible.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for this brief overview. And of course, if you want to learn more, go to Aiven's virtual booth right here on Swapcard during the conference.